stories only God could write, true testimonies of faith, miracles, revelations, life-changing encounters, the missionary, and the power of God in action. Get ready to be moved, to be inspired, and to renew your hope and your faith.
Have you ever felt pain so deep that you thought your heart would never heal? This is the story of a woman whose world fell apart in one morning, and how a stranger with faith brought light to her darkest day. It was a warm spring afternoon in Savannah, Georgia. The old town square was peaceful. Birds sang in the oak trees. Families walked by with ice cream. Children played near the fountain. But on a wooden bench, away from everyone, sat a woman who was falling apart. Her name was Linda, and she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Linda was 45 years old. She had soft brown eyes and gentle hands that had cared for her family for 20 years. She was the kind of woman who always put others first. She made breakfast every morning. She remembered birthdays. She prayed for her husband every night. Her name was Linda Parker, and she had been married to David for 20 years. 20 years. 2 decades of love, of trust, of building a life together. Or so she thought. That morning started like any other morning. Linda woke up early. She made coffee. She heard David in the shower, getting ready for work. He was a manager at a car dealership in town. He always left his phone charging in the kitchen while he got ready. Linda was wiping down the counter when she heard it. A buzz. Then another. And another. David's phone kept lighting up with messages. She wasn't the kind of wife who checked her husband's phone. She trusted him completely. But the messages kept coming one after another, and something in her heart felt wrong. She picked up the phone. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know why, but fear was rising in her chest. The screen showed a name she didn't recognize. Jessica. Then another message from someone named Ashley. Then Brittany. Linda's stomach dropped. With trembling fingers, she opened the messages. What she saw broke her into 1,000 pieces. Messages filled with words no wife should ever see. Pictures. Plans to meet. Promises of love. And it wasn't just one woman. It was many. 3 different women. Maybe more. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the kitchen floor. Linda couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. 20 years. 20 years of her life. She had given him everything. Her youth. Her dreams. Her whole heart. She heard David's footsteps coming down the stairs. She couldn't face him. Not now. Not yet. She grabbed her purse and ran out the front door. She didn't know where she was going. She just needed to get away. Away from that house. Away from the lies. Away from the man she thought she knew. Linda drove through town with tears streaming down her face. She couldn't see the road clearly. She pulled into the town square and parked. She got out and walked until she found that bench. And there she sat, alone, as her world crumbled around her. How could he do this? How could he look her in the eyes every day and lie? All those nights he said he was working late. All those business trips. All those times he said, "I love you," while he was loving someone else. Linda felt like she was dying inside. The pain was physical. Her chest hurt. Her whole body shook with sobs. She had no one to call. Her parents had passed away years ago. Her sister lived far away in California. She felt completely alone in her pain. People walked past her, but no one stopped. They looked away. Maybe they were uncomfortable. Maybe they didn't want to get involved. Linda felt invisible, broken, worthless. Then, after what felt like hours, she heard a gentle voice. "Excuse me, dear. Are you okay?" Linda looked up through her tears. Standing in front of her was a woman, probably in her 60s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She was holding a bag of groceries and wearing a simple blue dress. Everything about her seemed calm and peaceful, like she carried light with her wherever she went. "I'm sorry," Linda tried to say, wiping her face. "I've fine. I just..." But she couldn't finish. The tears came again, harder this time. The woman set down her groceries and sat down next to Linda on the bench. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat there, present and patient. Then she gently placed her hand on Linda's shoulder. "It's okay to cry," the woman said softly. "Sometimes tears are the only way the heart can speak." Something about her voice, so full of compassion, made Linda feel safe. And suddenly, all the words came pouring out. She told this stranger everything. About David. About the messages. About 20 years of marriage destroyed in one moment. About feeling like her life was over. The woman listened to every word. She didn't interrupt. She didn't judge. She just listened with her whole heart. When Linda finally stopped talking, exhausted from crying, the woman spoke. "My name is Margaret," she said. "And I want you to know something very important. What happened to you is not your fault. The pain you feel is real. But you are not alone, and this is not the end of your story." Linda looked at her. "How can you say that? My marriage is over. 20 years gone. I gave him everything, and he threw it all away. How do I come back from this?" Margaret's eyes filled with understanding. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but there is healing ahead. There is hope. I've seen it happen many times." "Are you a counselor?" Linda asked. Margaret smiled gently. "I'm a missionary. I've spent 30 years traveling around, helping people who are hurting. And I've learned something important. When we are at our lowest, that's when God's love can reach us most powerfully." Linda shook her head. "I don't know if I believe that anymore. I prayed for my marriage. I prayed for my husband. And look what happened." "I understand," Margaret said. "But sometimes God's answer isn't to fix what's broken. Sometimes His answer is to heal us and give us something new. Something better. You've been wounded deeply, Linda. But wounds can heal. And healed wounds make us stronger than we were before." They sat together as the sun began to set over Savannah. The square was quieter now. Margaret didn't rush away. She stayed with Linda, talking about pain and healing, about betrayal and forgiveness, about the long journey ahead. "There's a small church not far from here," Margaret finally said. "I lead services there on Sunday mornings. It's a place where broken people come to find healing. Would you consider coming this Sunday? You don't have to face this alone." Linda hesitated. She hadn't been to church in years. Life had gotten busy, but something in Margaret's eyes made her want to say yes. "Okay," Linda whispered. "I'll come." Margaret smiled and squeezed her hand. "Good. Because I have a feeling your story isn't over yet. In fact, I believe it's just beginning." As Margaret stood to leave, Linda felt something she hadn't felt in hours, a tiny spark of hope. It was small, barely there, but it was real. Maybe, just maybe, she could survive this. Maybe there was life after betrayal. But Linda had no idea that in just a few days, something would happen that would change everything. Something she never could have imagined. And the man who had destroyed her heart was about to walk into the very place where she was learning to heal. The next few days were the hardest of Linda's life. She couldn't go home. She couldn't face David. She stayed with a neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chun, who asked no questions and simply opened her door. David called. He texted. He showed up at places looking for her. But Linda wasn't ready. Every time she thought about him, she saw those messages. Those other women. Those lies. But she kept thinking about Margaret. About her gentle voice and kind eyes. About the hope she had spoken of. So when Sunday morning came, Linda got up, put on a simple dress, and drove to the little church Margaret had mentioned. Grace Community Church was small. Maybe 50 people could fit inside. It sat on a quiet street lined with magnolia trees. The building was old but well kept, painted white with a simple wooden cross above the door. As Linda walked up the steps, she felt nervous. She hadn't been to church in so long. What if people judged her? What if they could see how broken she was? But when she walked through the door, she felt only warmth. A few people smiled at her. An older gentleman handed her a program. And there, at the front, setting up for the service, was Margaret. When their eyes met, Margaret's whole face lit up with joy. After the service started, Linda sat in the back row. Margaret led the singing. Her voice was beautiful and full of peace. Then she stood up to speak. Her message that morning was simple but powerful. She talked about pain, about betrayal, about broken hearts. It was like she was speaking directly to Linda. "Life hurts sometimes," Margaret said, looking out at the small congregation. "People we love let us down. They break promises. They break our hearts. And when that happens, we face a choice. We can let that bitterness grow inside us like a poison. Or we can choose something harder, something that seems impossible. We can choose to forgive. Linda felt her body tense up. Forgive? How could she forgive David? What he did was unforgivable. I know what some of you are thinking, Margaret continued, as if reading Linda's mind. You're thinking, but you don't understand what they did to me. You don't know how much they hurt me. And you're right. I don't know your specific pain, but I know this. Holding on to unforgiveness is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. It destroys us from the inside. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about setting yourself free from the prison of bitterness. Linda's eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking. Could she really forgive David? After everything? It seemed impossible. The wound was too fresh, too deep. The service continued, but Linda barely heard the rest. Her mind was spinning. Margaret's words kept echoing in her heart. Forgiveness, freedom, healing. She wanted those things. But how? When the service ended, people stood and started talking. Linda was about to leave quietly when she heard a voice behind her that made her freeze. Linda. She turned around slowly, and there he was, David, her husband, standing in the church doorway, looking lost and broken. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He looked like he'd been crying. That Linda's first instinct was to run, to get away. But her feet wouldn't move. They stood there, 10 feet apart, in the little church, with people milling around them. What are you doing here? Linda finally managed to say. Her voice was cold. I was looking for you, David said, his voice cracking. Mrs. Chin told me you might be here. Linda, please. I need to talk to you. I need to tell you how sorry I am. Sorry. Linda's voice got louder. You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea how you've destroyed me? People were starting to notice. They stepped back, giving them space. Margaret appeared from the front of the church, watching carefully but not interfering. David took a step forward, and Linda could see he was crying. Real tears. His whole body was shaking. I know, he said. I know what I did. I know I destroyed everything. I've been sick for days. I can't eat. I can't sleep. All I can see is your face when you ran out of the house. Linda, I was a fool. I was selfish and stupid and cruel. I threw away the best thing in my life. I threw away 20 years with the only woman I've ever truly loved. Don't, Linda said, shaking her head. Don't you dare talk about love. You don't know what love is. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You're right, David said, his voice breaking completely. You're absolutely right. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve another chance. But I'm begging you, Linda. I'm begging you to know how sorry I am. I've ended everything with those women. I've told them all it's over. I want to get help. I want to go to counseling. I want to do whatever it takes to become the man you deserve. Linda felt something crack inside her chest. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to tell him it was too late, to make him feel the pain she felt. But another part of her, a part she didn't fully understand, felt something different. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine pain, genuine regret, real brokenness. That Margaret's words came back to her. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about setting yourself free. Linda closed her eyes. God help me, she prayed silently. I can't do this on my own. If this is real, if there's any hope, you have to help me. When she opened her eyes, she looked at David. Then she looked at Margaret, who was watching with tears in her own eyes and a gentle smile on her face. Margaret nodded as if to say, You can do this. It's your choice. But you can do this. Linda took a deep breath. David, she said quietly, what you did almost killed me. You broke me in ways I didn't know I could be broken. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if we can come back from this. I know, David whispered. But, Linda continued, feeling strength rising in her she didn't know she had. I don't want to carry this hate in my heart. I don't want to become bitter. So I'm going to try. I'm going to try to forgive you. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But I'm going to try. And if you're serious about getting help, if you're serious about changing, then maybe we can find a way forward. David let out a sound that was half sob, half relief. Thank you, he breathed. Thank you, Linda. I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I can be better, that I can be the husband you deserve. Margaret walked over to them. She looked at both of them with love and wisdom in her eyes. This is just the beginning, she said gently. Healing takes time. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly. But if you're both willing to do the work, if you're both willing to let God into this process, miracles can happen. Over the following months, David and Linda began the long, hard journey of rebuilding. They went to counseling together. They went separately. David joined a men's group at the church. Linda continued coming to Grace Community every Sunday, where Margaret's messages continued to speak life into her wounded heart. That it wasn't easy. There were days Linda wanted to give up. Days she couldn't look at David without feeling the pain all over again. But slowly, week by week, month by month, something miraculous began to happen. The wound began to heal. Not because the pain went away completely, but because Linda learned what it truly meant to forgive. David kept his promises. He was patient. He was humble. He did the work. He became transparent with everything. He showed Linda every day, through small actions and big ones, that he was a changed man. And 1 year later, on a Sunday morning at Grace Community Church, David and Linda stood before the congregation and renewed their wedding vows. This time, they weren't the same people who had married 20 years ago. They were stronger. They were wiser. They had been through fire and come out refined. Margaret stood before them with tears of joy streaming down her face. "A year ago," she said to everyone gathered, "these two people walked into this church broken and lost. Today they stand here whole. Not because their journey was easy, but because they chose forgiveness. They chose healing. They chose love, even when it was hard. And that, my friends, is what a miracle looks like." Linda looked at David, and for the first time in a year, when she looked at him, she didn't see betrayal. She saw her husband, the man who had failed but had fought to become better, the man who had broken her heart but was committed to protecting it for the rest of his life. And as they kissed, sealing their renewed promises, Linda felt something she thought she'd never feel again. She felt hope. She felt peace. She felt loved. Today, 3 years later, David and Linda Parker still attend Grace Community Church. They lead a support group for couples in crisis. They share their story with others who are facing betrayal and brokenness. And they testify to everyone who will listen that no marriage is too broken for God to heal. Margaret often sits in the front row during their talks, smiling that gentle smile, knowing that what she witnessed that day in the town square was indeed the beginning of something miraculous. Because that's what happens when a hurting heart meets the love of God, carried by someone willing to sit on a bench and care. That if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs hope today. Because somewhere right now someone is sitting on a bench, broken and alone. And they need to know that their story isn't over. That healing is possible. That miracles still happen. God bless you, and remember, it's never too late for a new beginning.